Initial reports fixate on an Su-34 down over the Black Sea. This is a deliberate distraction. The kinetic cost of a single tactical aircraft is a rounding error in a systemic conflict. The legacy media reports on the missile. They fail to report on the silence. The real vector is non-kinetic. As confirmed by Dragos, the Electrum Group's targeting of the Polish electric grid was not mere sabotage. It was a live-fire test of a paralysis protocol, a deniable attack designed to probe the threshold for a kinetic response. This is the blueprint for asymmetric escalation. The ultimate expression of this doctrine is not a grid down, it is total sensory deprivation. According to CSIS assessments, the primary targets in a launch-on-warning scenario are not military bases, but the undersea fiber optic cables that function as the global economy's central nervous system. Simultaneously, RUSI confirms the deployment of assets designed for temporary satellite blinding. The objective is not to destroy the adversary, but to render it catatonic, a blind leviathan. It has all its kinetic power, but its senses are severed. It cannot see, it cannot verify, it cannot retaliate without risking a terminal miscalculation. This is the operational execution of compounded strategic ambiguity. The engineered fog is so complete that any response becomes a gamble. The system is designed to paralyze the stronger power, forcing inaction as the price of avoiding Armageddon. The silence is the weapon. The motive for asymmetric escalation is not strength. It is a mathematical certainty driven by weakness. We are taught to view war as a contest of military hardware. This is a fatal miscalculation. The true battleground is the balance sheet. The war in Ukraine for the Russian Federation has transitioned from a military operation into an existential solvency crisis. CSIS analysis confirms the core liability is domestic. The Kremlin is grappling with an unpopular war that carries immense political risk. Every asset lost, like the reported downing of an Su-34 strike aircraft, is not just a tactical setback. It is a multi-million-dollar write-down on a national balance sheet, already buckling under pressure, amplifying the domestic political cost. A state facing insolvency cannot sustain a symmetric, kinetic conflict. The cost per effect of conventional warfare becomes untenable. The state is then forced to pivot. It must find vectors that deliver maximum paralysis to the adversary for minimal cost and with maximum deniability. This is not a choice. It is a requirement for regime survival. This is the blueprint that leads directly to events like the cyber attack on the Polish electric system. The attack, attributed by Dragos to the Electrum Group, is the physical manifestation of this solvency crisis. It is a low-cost, high-impact probe designed to test vulnerabilities and impose systemic risk on a NATO-aligned state, all from a position of relative kinetic weakness. The motive is economic desperation, weaponized. The protocol's lethality is driven by a simple mathematical imbalance. According to analysis from institutions like RUSI, a state-of-the-art main battle tank represents a capital expenditure of approximately $5 million. A first-person view drone, capable of neutralizing that exact asset, can be assembled for as little as $500. The kinetic cost to destroy a high-value target has collapsed by a factor of 10,000. This is not merely a tactical shift, it is the fundamental democratization of violence. The barrier to entry for projecting lethal, state-level force has been effectively erased. For a nation-state facing an existential solvency crisis, the choice is not strategic, it is a mathematical certainty. They cannot afford a symmetric, kinetic war. They are forced to leverage the vector with the highest possible return on investment. This economic inversion is the engine of asymmetric escalation. It allows a weaker actor to impose a disproportionate and unsustainable economic liability on a stronger adversary. The defender's cost to intercept and neutralize thousands of low-cost threats scales exponentially, bankrupting them through attrition. The attacker's cost remains negligible. This is the blueprint for paralyzing a superpower without firing a single ballistic missile. The regional instability flagged by intelligence monitors like RUSI and CSIS is not the primary threat. It is the laboratory. These gray zones are proxy battlefields for testing non-kinetic protocols where the cost of miscalculation is contained. They are staging grounds to refine the very blueprint used by groups like Electrum against the Polish grid, leveraging cyber vectors to paralyze critical infrastructure. The objective is to calibrate the impact, how much systemic pressure can be applied before triggering a kinetic response. Deliberate strategic ambiguity, as documented in global policy frameworks, is compounded in these zones. It becomes a weaponized fog, allowing adversaries to test the threshold of paralysis. The chaos you see is not the cause. It is the symptom of a protocol being perfected in the shadows, ready for deployment against primary economic targets. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a choice. It is a protocol of last resort. The logic is zero-sum. If an incoming decapitation strike is detected, you launch your own arsenal before it is destroyed on the ground. The critical liability is the word detected. This detection system is now the primary target. CSIS analysis confirms that non-kinetic, deniable attacks are the preferred vector for weaker states facing existential solvency crises. The objective is paralysis. Dragos reports the Electrum Group's cyber attack on the Polish electric system was not a test. It was a blueprint for blinding a nation's nervous system. This is the fog of digital war. When the early warning radar goes blind, the commander is confronted with a mathematical certainty. The system is either experiencing a catastrophic failure, or it is being deliberately blinded as a prelude to a first strike. The protocol offers no third option. This ambiguity is a weapon. As seen in policies surrounding Taiwan, compounding strategic ambiguity is used to paralyze an adversary's decision-making cycle. An attacker leverages this engineered fog. The initial reports of a Russian Su-34 crash, first attributed to enemy fire then to other causes, demonstrate how easily miscalculation occurs even with conventional kinetic events. In a digital blackout, that margin of error evaporates. The commander is forced to assume the worst-case scenario. Fear of kinetic annihilation forces a preemptive launch based on digital ghosts. The system, designed to prevent a decapitation, becomes the very mechanism that triggers the conflict. This isn't a bug, it is a feature of asymmetric escalation. The protocol has a term for testing an adversary's trigger point without incurring kinetic cost: the calibration shot. It is not a declaration of war, it is a test of national solvency under duress. While legacy media focuses on ambiguous kinetic events, like the disputed downing of the Su-34 near the Black Sea, the real vector is systemic. The ambiguity is the weapon. According to CSIS, strategic ambiguity, once a tool of deterrence in arenas like Taiwan, is now an offensive protocol. The Polish grid attack by the Electrum Group was not a random event. It was a field test. It demonstrated the capability to paralyze distributed energy resources, a systemic liability hidden in plain sight. The accelerant is the oncoming existential solvency crisis, which economists warn will make 2008 look like a Sunday school picnic. A state facing fiscal collapse has zero liability in deploying a deniable cyber asset. The risk-reward calculation is inverted. The calibration shot will therefore be an economic decapitation strike, engineered to be attribution impossible. The calibration forecast. Within 12 months, expect a cascading, multi-day blackout of the Port of Long Beach's terminal automation and data infrastructure. It will be attributed to a newly named ransomware collective, but its function is to measure U.S. response time and political will under extreme economic pressure before the kinetic phase is initiated.